Today's session will be about impact and reputation, and covering the, let's say, different stages, different steps in the scientific process. So from strategic publishing to showcasing what you've done, to showcasing your success. Let me go through the agenda very quickly. So different points I want to cover today. There are obviously lots of different developments when it comes to scientific research. So we'll talk about some of these challenges in, new developments in the science world. We'll also look at something quite important, quite interesting, detecting high potential research fields for better impact. So what we mean here is, you often hear when you do a literature review, you try to be, to develop research at what we call the frontier, the edge of the existing knowledge. So there are some ways to detect those high potential research fields. Another important element is the collaboration and partnerships. When it comes to science, there is something quite important, is working with others, partners, to share resources, to tackle very important areas or research topics. So we'll look at that as well. Then, so as you can see, starting from the selection of your topic, working with others, and then comes the publishing. So where do you publish, how do you share your findings? And then after the publication, the work is not over. The goal here is to demonstrate what you've done, to demonstrate your research impact and boost your reputation. So there are a few things that you can do, a few tricks as well. I talk about that as well in my newsletter, like having a proper profile with your work, not only publication, but also peer review, having some metrics to showcase, your profile in terms of activities. So that's what we mean by comprehensive view of your productivity and results. So let's start with the first point, which is the changing world. And few statistics here. For each and every number that you see on this slide, you get the sources, right? So this is coming from ISI Global Research Report. This is from Research Professional News. This is from the European Commission. And this is from College and University Professional Association for Human Resources. So different pillars here I want to cover. The first one is the competitive environment. So we see something quite obvious, but this is something you can easily measure when you just look at publications, but also in terms of investment. So if you look at numbers coming from different countries, you look at China, multiplied by 3.5 when it comes to the investment on research. Then you have, when it comes to evaluation, assessment of researchers or research in general, there is a growing trend towards what we call societal impact. I think this should be the default, in a sense that when you do research, you try to impact society in some ways. And in that source, we see in the survey from 2023, more than half of research staff see societal impact as the future. So basically, you do research that is useful to society. Then there is also a major trend towards open research when it comes to funding. For example, funders will tell you that, okay, we give you money, but the results of your work or your research projects should be publicly available. They should be open. So almost, let's say 42%, like 4/10 of funders have open science policies. And then you have an important element when it comes to retaining talents. There is an increase in employee turnover, meaning the staff keep changing because they have better opportunities somewhere else. So we see that that's also growing. The next thing I want to showcase here in this slide is the priorities. So when So again, that's a report from Research Professional News. And there was a question, what are your institution's 3 main priorities with regards to academic research for the next year? And top 3, you see funding. Of course, we need money to do research. But the second one is quite interesting, to demonstrate research impact. It does make sense when you think from the university perspective, but also from the ministry. I mean, you use resources. How do you measure what you do, right? And that's an important element. And the third priority for the next 5 years, this is improving research quality. These responses are from research offices, which typically manage the research activities in a university, right? For the industry, would be called different, right? Would be the R&D or research and development innovation department, something like that. But this is mainly from universities, right? And then you have other elements which are, I find quite interesting. The diversifying funding sources. I think this is one reflex when you need money, you go directly to your research office, you're in the university, and then you look at national funding sources like the ministry and so on. But you don't, I mean, you shouldn't rely on only one source of funding. And then the other elements that we talked about in the introduction, collaboration and also open access publication. So some examples, for instance, we can use different elements to get a sense of the impact. So of course, those metrics would be don't come without criticism. So if you look at academic scholarly impact, you probably heard about number of publications. I think this is relatively easy to count, like how many publications you have, number of citations you receive, or you received, the H-index, where you publish, conference presentation, and so on. So you can use different elements to get a sense of your impact. And then there is the, in terms of innovation, so for instance, a researcher comes up with an idea, does a study, publish the paper, but perhaps another way is to develop new technologies. And those technologies, they might lead to new applications, new product, new processes, new services, new companies. So an example easy, I think, to have in mind is the patent. So typically when you have a patent, you want to protect your innovation, your invention, right? So we can get a sense as well when it comes to innovation impact. You look at patents, you look at collaboration with the industry, because we know the industry, they would work on, applied research on real world problems, real world issues. They might collaborate with you because they have the funding, they have the data, but they still need brains, they need staff to work on those issues, and of course technology transfer, right? When it comes to another example, environmental sustainability impact, there are few things we can have a look at. For instance, everything related to environment. Do you work on improving the environment, climate change mitigation, for example, or sustainable development goals? You might have heard about this term. These goals were set by the United Nations countries. They ratified that. They signed basically engaged and say we're going to work towards those goals. There are 17 of them. Plenty of goals like having access to water, education, no poverty, sustainability or sustainable cities, and so on. So different goals like that. And of course, we can see based on your publications if you're aligned towards those goals. Then you have the societal policy impact. I'll speak about that. I have some slides about this. So here we have a look at different perspectives. So for instance, your research has been used by the ministry in, the legal environment, and your research, created discussions that ultimately was cited in official documents, policy documents, even sometimes laws, right? So, or this type of documents. So that's one way also of looking at tracking the impact you might have. So what we do here at Clarivate, for those of you who don't know Clarivate, we provide lots of solutions around those different themes and different types of services. So of course, content, which is basically data, publication, patent, citation data, dissertation and thesis, policy documents, and so on. We can also provide data around people to build the best teams. And then we also have solutions to demonstrate that, that impact. You might have heard about some of these names: Web of Science, InCites, Journal Citation Reports, and so on. We'll go through some of these solutions shortly, right? In short, Web of Science, you have a look at everything that is in a document, a publication, a conference, a book chapter, a dissertation, a thesis, a patent, data citation index, and so on. InCites, that is to compare and get conduct some analysis to benchmark, but also try to understand where science is going. Interesting analysis we can conduct there: collaboration network, collaboration with the industry, and so on. Insights towards funding or into funding. Journal citation reports to benchmark journals. Pivot RP to find funding sources. Esploro to benchmark, showcase your research, but also benchmarking what is done in your institution. You have reports to have a good overview of what's happening in your institution. Consulting, which is basically services. People would sit with you and try to understand where you're going, and they would consult you and also guide you towards those goals. Web of Science Author Connect, that's also an interesting service which help you find and connect with people for any needs. For example, you want to market your services, you want to attract people, you want to collaborate with them, you want to invite them for conferences or to submit manuscript in your journals. So lots of services. I'll go through that in more details very shortly. Let's start with the support network. Here, the point I want to make here is that lots of issues, especially societal issues, you won't be able to work on them alone because they're so big, right? And we see that also in some fields where we see more and more collaboration between different fields, like interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary research. Let's say, for example, someone who's a mathematician who wants, they was working with a computer scientist, but also a biologist to modelize how, I don't know, a disease is being transmitted, right? So of course you need different skills. You need computer science, you need math for the models, like network science, but also how the disease is being transmitted. So that's just an example I'm making up right now. The point here is this obviously a very competitive environment. Countries, they always try to attract talents. Lots of initiatives, visas and so on. You might have seen the news with the US right now, restricting visas for certain jobs, or it comes with the cost now. Here, what we want to do is we want to look at increasing your chances of success by building strategic and diverse research teams. So in one team, you're going to have different profiles, especially when you apply for funding, for example. It's quite competitive. If the funder is receiving 100 applications, it's below 20. It's basically between 10 to 20% going to receive funding. So you want to have the best chances on your side, locating the best people, collaborating with the right experts, and perhaps setting up new partnerships so that you work with the right entities. It doesn't have to be international. Sometimes just within the same institution, let's say that department or team from the same university. Sometimes a domestic collaboration, let's say University A and B from the same country. So it doesn't have to be, of course, international collaboration. Collaboration comes with quite a lot of benefits. If you take the first one, that's the sources from this publication, published in 2015. And they look at Italy, and they compare publication with co-authors, like collaboration, co-authored publication, and no collaboration. And they found there is a direct correlation between the number of authors and citation impact, which, if you step back, if you work with 2, 3, 4 people, each person has its own network, right? So you basically benefit from the aggregated network, I would say. I mentioned that several times already. Deep research, you're forced to do more than clip the top of trees of your research. So you try to think from other perspectives. I gave that example: math, computer science, biology, but it can be anything like social sciences, computer science again. We see AI pretty much everywhere now. But you could think of, let's say, even some fields, they became the result of a merge between two different fields. For example, biomechanics. It's biology, but also mechanics. If someone needs, let's say, an arm or a leg because that person lost an arm, for example. So that's basically what we call now biomechanics. But initially, it's just two fields being merged, right? The deeper the research, the more publication, because you get different perspectives, so different angles to use when you work on a topic. Of course, I mean, that's obvious. Broader expertise, because you work and you come with different types of knowledge, right? So more techniques, more staff, more resources, shared workload. I think that's easy to understand as well. And also funding opportunities. I think this is something that I've seen one institution here in the region that I remember they gave me that very, it's a real example. They told us, or they told me, they couldn't apply to that funding because they were not based in the US, but they had all the skills, they prepared everything, the proposal and so on. And they basically approached one institution in the US and they say, we want that funding. We already prepared the whole process, the whole documentation, but we need you to apply because you're based in the US, and of course, we will be able to share that funding. And that's what I'm saying here. Getting funding in Europe and the US is typically much easier in the context of a collaboration. So this is something that is important to keep in mind. So how can we see the influence of collaboration? Here so that's a statistics here that we see 70% international collaboration papers, they receive on average 70% higher citation on average. I talked about that already. And we see that research is more and more international. There are lots of reasons behind that. Just right now, we are more than 350 people in the webinar, so it's easy to connect right now with the internet, easy to find people on the internet, email address, it's quite quick, right? So it's easier to work as an international team. And we can see that if you take, let's say you had 100 papers in the 90s, only 8 of them would show authors from different countries. Research A from, let's say, Morocco, and research B from Turkey, right? Another example would be someone from Saudi Arabia and someone from Pakistan, right? So that's an international collaboration. And then you take UAE and Qatar, that's another type of, that's another example of international collaboration, right? And now if you look at 2024, if you take 100 papers, you'll find approximately a quarter of them, 25%, right? 25% have co-authors from different countries. And what we're seeing here is that domestic work tends to receive, of course, that's not, it's a trend, I would say, tend to receive fewer citations than research with international co-authors. And the point we want to make here is that that's a recent report. When you look at assessment, if you ignore that, you may overlook issues, whether impact come from research quality or collaboration. A paper that is getting more cited doesn't always necessarily mean that it's better than the other one, or it's higher quality or more impact. So here what we basically say is that you look, you compare apples with apples. If you're looking at international collaboration, compare it with other international papers. If you look at domestic publication, then you look at only domestic. And it's even more precise than this, because domestic would be, for example, a single institution, or domestic, multiple institutions from the same country. And collaboration is not the same when you look at, as I said, for example, an institution from UAE and Qatar, that's 2 countries, 2 affiliation, but you can have 3 countries, 4 countries, 5 countries, and more, right? So it's very important to take that element when you compare publications. So InCites, you might have heard about InCites as well. InCites is built on Web of Science core collection data going back to 1980, and there are lots of analysis you can conduct there. You can analyze by researchers. You'll see their affiliations, the number of papers. You can quickly identify high-performing researchers. You can analyze by organization, globally or within a specific country, really up to you, or a region or selection of countries. And then you can also analyze by research areas. What I mentioned with collaboration is also true with research areas. For instance, someone working in social sciences would have different, I would say, publication behavior, but also citation behavior than someone working in oncology, for example, or in medicine, or in physics, right? In the Web of Science, you'll see, I'm sure you're familiar with that. It's one way of searching or finding people, right? So I want to find researchers who are active on a specific topic. I will have a full view list of people active on that topic, right? And you have the list of publication, their metrics, right? Their impact compared with the world, number of citations, the H-index, and so on. So the goal here is what we call KOLs, or key opinion leaders. You want to find them quickly. Right. And then there's the other service that I mentioned earlier. You want to target, you want to find people who are related to what you're interested in. So you want to target them with confidence. A few statistics, so we have 4 million contacts in the database, and then you want to connect with them based on your needs. So if you're looking for people active in a specific field, or you want to invite them to a conference, you want to invite them to submit a manuscript in your journal, and so on. And that's basically, campaigns, so that you target the right people. Another service is the consultancy. So we call that talent identification. So for instance, looking at one university and you say, we want to identify the internal stars, but also external rising stars. So perhaps we can approach them, we can hire them, and we can work with them, right? So that's what we mean by retention. The people who are already working with you, you want to keep them. You want, perhaps if they are external and they're good in their field, you want to hire them. Or perhaps if you cannot hire them, perhaps you can work with them. So, and that's also interesting where, some institutions, countries, they have policies in place. So for example, they would limit you and say, well, we cannot work with that country. There's, for any reason, political, any reason, right? Might be some requirements. Let's say a funding agency is saying, well, to get the funding, you need to work. That's sometimes a criteria. You want to work with someone from that country because the topic requires you to work on the ground, or you want to work with someone who's on the ground, right? So that's the type of analysis we can do as well. And we can analyze based on the publication data, publication with the industry. So for instance, if I take someone from Egypt or from Oman, for example, or Kuwait, I can see there is a publication with a corporation. That's basically a collaboration with the industry, right? And we can also do that at the department level. Let's say I want to see what this department from my institution is doing. So that's what we mean by collaboration analysis. Then there is the other element that I talked about, which is the strategic publishing decisions. Depending on what you want to achieve, I see journals sometimes, or even institutions, they are requested to publish in index journals in the Web of Science with impact factor and so on. But that goes beyond that. Not only metrics, but also having a good view of the profile of the journal. So you want to publish your manuscript in the most relevant journal. You might have heard about journal citation reports, which publish the impact factors, and you're gonna have like a comprehensive view of the journal. So here you can evaluate them with different views, not only the impact or the influence, but you're gonna have data around the open access as well, the sources of the citations, the institutions contributing to the journal, the countries contributing to the journal, and so on. So it's really a very comprehensive profile of journal. So a few screenshots. So for instance, if you look at this is a list of journals, in economics for the year 2024, and two filters. I'm interested in Q1, Q2. That's basically the top range in that field, and I can compare them side by side, right? So impact factor, I would have also the quartile, and so on. So lots of data coming from journal citation reports. And then in the InCites, so of course you can run a quite specific analysis, which is the answer to a specific question, like in which journals do authors outperform the average journal citation rate? So here you look at one analysis and you're asking for a list of journals, which ones where the authors do better than the average, right? So you get a list of journals. You can have such analysis as well, the trend of number of publications by quartile, and so on. So that's from InCites. So now the next point in the presentation in the agenda was how do you demonstrate research impact and build your reputation? We already talked about profiles in the Web of Science. You have the capability of showcasing what you've done. So that's an example of a profile. Someone from Max Planck, his name, he claimed the profile. So he's managing his profile in the Web of Science. He's a highly cited researcher, also a top peer reviewer, not only active in terms of publication, 579 documents, but also quite active in terms of peer review, right? It's quite small here, but I can tell you it's 311 peer reviews, okay? And based on his publication, so H-index and so on, but also we can see he's quite influential in his field. He's in the 76th percentile, and I can see he's active in information science, library science, computer science, other topics, bibliometrics, citation, and so on. So it's quite easy to go to the Web of Science, search for your name, or you create your profile, search for your publications. You can add them to your profile, and then you can profile at the institutional level, but also different levels such as department, funder, journal, and so on. You can do different analysis. So for instance, here I'm looking at citation topics, but which is basically a topic, research topic. But here we can have a look at which research topics are driving the strength within your institution or within your set of publications. So the darker, the higher the impact, right? And then you have the different goals that I mentioned earlier, good health and well-being, climate action, gender equality, and so on. So we can quickly see from at different levels, again, researcher, institution, number of publications that contribute to those different goals. And then the research horizon navigator, which is also what I mentioned, one of the first points that I mentioned in my introduction, which is where is research going? What are the emerging topics that perhaps I should focus on? There is the organization report. You can run lots of analysis at an institutional level. For example, productivity. Very simple. You count number of publications per year, number of citations received, publication by field. So different ways to look at research, something quite precise here. These are the fields, and something broader, physical sciences, life sciences. So these are broad fields like engineering and so on, something more precise like biochemistry, astronomy, and so on. Then you can benchmark your impact versus the world. So for that institution, the impact has grown over time. You can see the trend, and now is above the world average, which is 1. Then here we have a look at the collaboration. So collaboration by international collaboration, the trend. So that's the global one. You remember from 5 in the 80s, 5%, to about 23, 24%. And now that institution or that group for that entity, that institution is has increased the international collaboration to reach about 70%, right? And now, not only that, but also which institutions. So here you'd have the list of institutions, and here the academic institutions. And you can run basically the same for a researcher, for a person, right? So a researcher, number of papers 44, H-index is 15, breakdown by field, publication per year, the impact by field. So the researcher can come and say, well, when it comes to parasitology, biology, and virology, that's where I'm getting the highest impact compared to the world. And also collaboration with international colleagues. Here, no collaboration with the industry. So lots of data you can use to get a sense in terms of research strategy. There's also a project that we call GIPP or GIP, Global Institutional Profiles Project. And here what we do is we basically get data from the institution through data collection, surveys, and so on. And so there is demographical data, for instance, the number of staff per or staff by per student, for example. What's the ratio, and how is that ratio compared to the world, right? So that's what we typically call demographical data, but also academic reputation. So we run a survey, number of degrees awarded, and so on, international diversity funding, gender. So lots of data around demography, and also, of course, publication and citation data. So that's a project. Institutions that are ranked in US News, they basically that data is displayed on the main rankings, and you can see, for instance, there is a project that I recommend you have a look at. That's a sample profile, number of academic staff, the number of staff who are international origin, academic staff who are women, and research staff in orange. Right, so lots of indicators you can play with that, right? Teaching reputation, academic staff over students, the institutional income over the academic staff, doctor degrees awarded, and so on. Now let me speak about Esploro. Esploro is typically a platform that helps you showcase what an institution is doing, right? And we get lots of different data sets. right? Data points, preprints, publication, data sets, awards, media mentions, patents, projects, prices, citations, and so on. We combine that into one platform, and then we showcase that on a website. So that becomes like a researcher profile for that person, or research portal, right? So here we can get a quick sense of what's happening in that repository, looking at that researcher. She put her LinkedIn profile, Twitter at that time, ResearchGate, and so on, a quick biography. I can have a look at the output, number of publications, awards, media projects, and so on. Of course, that's for one researcher, but if you look at one institution, we're going to have a look at, let's say, I'm interested in people from that institution who work on coral reef ecology. And I'm going to get the list of 12 people from that institution who work on that topic, right? So it's optimized for SEO, accessible in multiple languages. And then let me speak about Pivot RP. So here, Pivot RP is built to support your funding success. Here we have profiles as well, an overview, researcher ID, the ORCID, personal website, publications as well, the grants, and the metrics that go back to the Web of Science. And we see that within the platform, this researcher has been matched with 71 funding opportunities. So here she could go here and have a look at all this funding that match her profile in terms of skills. So I spoke already about the consultancy. Our team, the experts, they can provide some guidance, strategic framework around different elements. Performance, also the reputation, benchmarking, the broader impact, and research culture. Now I want to introduce a new platform that Clarivate is currently developing, which is called the Web of Science Research Intelligence, was RI. And here what we do is we're basically building a new solution that will enable research institutions to accelerate innovation and so showcase the societal impact that we talked about earlier. So it will offer your view as an institution, but also a global view of and of what's happening at different levels. The goal here is to win more funding, build stronger research teams, demonstrate the societal impact of research, and you can do that within this new platform. So as you can see here, you want to find funding, you want to analyze emerging topics, evaluate your impact, analyze the collaboration. That comes with also some AI or agentic AI, where you can have basically a discussion with the solution to come to some analysis, right? So here, that's the landing page. You can get a quick sense of what's happening in your institution, but also the funding that is available and have been added recently. Find people, but also analyze your impact. So that comes with different analysis. I'm not going through all of them, but as I said, you want to find people, you want to find funding, assess the performance of your institution, find emerging topics, and then analyze the societal impact. The societal impact looks like that, where it goes through analyzing your research against different pillars, I would say. So the economic aspect, technological, medical, environmental, social and cultural, human capital, legal and governance, political and policy. There's a publicly available report that I recommend you look at, you give it a read, where ISI develops this framework to evaluate the societal impact, right? So you'll see something like that. So for instance, you want to compare 4 institutions, okay? One, two institutions, sorry, forward-looking, retrospective, so 2 colors, right? So different than the impact profiles you look at, or the different pillars. And then citation 2, which is more like forward-looking retrospective, right? So you can identify and analyze benchmark institutions like that. In WOSARA, I mentioned that already. You're going to have the agentic AI in the Web of Science research intelligence, where there is an AI assistant to measure and visualize the research impact, collaboration analysis, another assistant to discover new research areas where breakthroughs are likely to occur. An AI assistant that can help you, let's say, simulate, modelize a research team. You want to identify people, and let's say if they were to work together, what would be the performance of that team? And of course, finding relevant opportunities. For those of you speaking about people who have access already to the resources that I talked about earlier, InCites, Pivot RP, Esploro, there is obviously lots of benefits to upgrade to WOSARI. So you're going to unify different capabilities in terms of decisions, not data management. You're going to focus on those analytics and insights. They're going to be unified. They're going to be one pre-populated system with ongoing updates on the system, and simplified user experience. In terms of research development, the goal is really to focus on innovation. So finding the right funding, people, and getting recommendation in terms of alerts related to research, but also funding and people. And then the last element is also to showcase what you've done, right? Which is basically done in Esploro. You want to showcase that impact within that institution where you have these different frameworks like societal impact and other views. Right, so here, of course, we use Web of Science data, Web of Science expanded API, the Researcher API, InCites API, custom data, Journal API, but also feeds from Web of Science. A few statistics about the breadth and depth of the Web of Science database. In InCites, we're talking about trusted data coming from core collection. It gives you some elements around strategic insights, and you can report from different perspectives. As I mentioned earlier in my previous slides, you can do lots of analysis, different levels, researcher, institution, impact, collaboration, funding, and so on. I want to speak about the Web of Science Author Connect, where you can basically identify relevant researchers and you want to approach them in a compliant way. You're going to have better campaigns when you invite and you want to approach those people. And there's a detailed segmentation based on the subject, like the field, their region, career, and also their impact. Esploro, very quickly, we're talking about comprehensive data, dynamic profiles, and integration with your existing system, where we can also harvest data from different sources to build the most comprehensive profiles. Also getting data at the researcher level in terms of citation metrics from Web of Science, of course, but also Scopus, dimension like ad metrics and so on. Pivot RP, talking about curated data, strategic intelligence. So you want to find funding faster. You have tools to do that to save time and getting insights as well when it comes to matching funding with people. The news on when it's happening in the world, different regions, as you can see here, UK, Europe, US, Australia, Africa, the world, and so on. So our editors, they have leading expertise when it comes to what's happening in the world, research policy, research developments, local knowledge, so specialized or specialist journalists based around the world to focus on different regions. And that's what I mean by extensive coverage. from a regional perspective. We spoke about consulting already. Experts providing their skills, expertise they accumulated over decades across multiple fields, using quality data to get the best insights. And we're talking about consulting, so focusing on each and every institution specific needs. Right, so here you could, of course, combine different solutions. So Pivot RP, InCites, Esploro, looking at internal grants, identify rising star researcher candidates, and increase the awarded rates of applicants. Pivot RP, InCites for the external grants, and InCites looking at prestigious awards. And so that's it for now. I'm gonna have a look at the chat if there's any questions, and also the Q&A. Let me start with the Q&A. Okay, Q&A, there was no question in the Q&A section. Let me have a look at the chat. Yeah, a few comments earlier about the sound. Yeah, thanks for those of you who confirmed the sound was good. For those of you who had trouble, next time I recommend you try to have the best internet connection as possible, and perhaps close the other application just for the webinar duration. Is there any questions or comments? Yeah, most welcome, John. Yeah, most welcome, Faiza. Thank you very much. I said John. Maybe it was Joyce. I'm not sure of the first name. Okay, good. Any questions? Yeah, so here, for example, I'm connected on Pivot RP. I can search, let's say, funding available about robotics, and I want to do put a filter. I'm affiliated with an academic institution, and I'm early career emerging in fields, and I want to do that. Let's say want to do that. I want to sort by amount, so I can have a list of funding opportunities about robotics. All right, and so that's basically how the Pivot RP works. Well, I can show you something else when it comes to Esploro. Esploro is typically a platform, a portal. So I can show you a few examples of people who, or institutions who implemented Esploro. Let me see, it doesn't matter, anyone. Let me take Drexel University. So that's Esploro from Clarivate. They hosted that on their website. And I can have a look at very quickly. So 371,000 downloads, 103,000 research outputs, what is popular, and so on. I want to see their researchers for now. Okay, so I get a good, 1,800 researchers. So if I take Abu Musa Abdullah, for example, here is a postdoc, right? He has his ORCID Scholar ID as well, Google Scholar, his email address, and I can see his publication, right? With the metrics and so on. So that's what an institution can do at on the website, and I can see how the institution is structured, like the different groups, different colleges, and so on. Let's say I'm interested in engineering, and I want to see someone from electrical computer engineering, and I want to see if there is anyone from signal processing. Apply. Now that's basically how you can find researchers, right? People to collaborate with. So let's say Bruce here, and I even get his email address, publication. I can get a sense of what he worked on, even his PhD thesis. Any questions on this? Let me see in the chat. Yeah, so for those of you, you would need to check with your institution first if you have access. Happy to work with you if you. I mean, I can guide you to the right people. I can check if you have access first of all. There's a question. What if we cannot find our university? Can you tell me your university in the chat? I have a look at the attendance. You don't need to confirm your attendance. I will send you the certificate since you connected with your email address and name. I will share the certificate with you. Yeah, you'll get the certificate by email. Yeah, so of course, yeah, so all right, so for here, for example, so I cannot obviously check every institution. So the response from William was Mohammed V is here. Mohammed V University in Rabat, right? And here you have, let's say, 10,000 researchers, only 771 claim their profile. Okay, I can do another one. Let's say the second one is Hassan I in Sittard. Hassan First University of Sittard. Okay. All right. So and that's one way of doing it. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah. So thanks everyone who gave their institutional name. I cannot obviously check with. Yeah, I cannot do all the institutions. Sorry. But even if the institution is not there, meaning it hasn't been unified, you can still search by name, right? You can search by last name, first name. Yeah, so we can do that. Speaking about next webinar, someone is asking about the webinars. Yeah, I personally announce them through my newsletter, so you can register there and get the I mean some tips around what I mentioned: the editing, the publishing, peer review, finding collaborators, funding, and so on. I'm gonna announce very soon the October. So that was for today. This one was for last week, peer review, right? So every month I typically do 2 webinars, one in English, one in French. So I'll share that with you so you can receive those alerts, right? And again, someone asked me just this morning, how do I attend, get register, and so on. You'll get the links to register. Quite straightforward. So this one is the one of today. You register first name, last name, your details, and that's what I use to send you the certificate. So sometimes people tell me the name is not correct. It's simply because you didn't give your full name or just your initials. Yeah. On top of that, they are also announced Web of Science, public webinars, I think should be there. Yeah, they are also available on, where are they? Yeah. So you can also use that if you're interested. Yeah, you just need to follow that page and then register to the webinars of interest. Yeah, Ayub, I'll take your question. I think that will be the last one. So I'll wait for your question. Ayub is saying, I have a general question. Feel free to ask. I'll wait for you to pose the question. In the meantime, I'll just have a look at the Q&A. Yeah, oh, of course, yeah, sorry. In the Q&A, many people also gave their, yeah, Qadi Ayad is there. The Ego University is there. Yeah, so 2 questions. Okay, Abdul Hakim, Nordin, you can, yeah, you asked the question. Okay, so I see three questions. Okay. Okay, so the question from Ayub is, what is the best and optimized method to publish in Clarivate? First of all, you don't publish with or directly in Clarivate. You publish in a journal indexed in the Web of Science. So I write a full guide about that. I'll share the guide with you. It's called Relevant Journal. And I give you all the steps basically to identify the right journal for publication, starting from what you read. I think that's a good starting point. And then if the indexation is important to get your PhD, master's, and so on, will get promoted, I give you all the tips here. It's quite straightforward, practical guide. You check the aims and scope of the journal in audience, the impact, personal requirements. So can get a sense of, does the journal publish quickly? The peer review, very important. So starting from what you read, starting from your literature review or literature search, index journals. So here you can match your title and manuscript, title and abstract of your manuscript, right? So let me show you the way it works. So here you basically, so it's free, by the way. Here you can create a free account, and you can paste the title and abstract, and as a response, you're going to have a list of journals that are indexed in the Web of Science. Okay, so I talk about that here. Journal profiles, open access might be important as well. Publication speed, very important to have backup plan. Okay. Yeah, so a journal in the Web of Science. That's exactly it. You should target, if that's important, you should target a journal in the Web of Science. Okay, so a question from Abdul Hakim, who says, thank you very much for your positive feedback. Really appreciate. Does Clarivate have a corporate social responsibility unit that seeks to collaborate with journals from Africa? Well, we don't work directly with journals. I think you should probably check with publishers. The work we do with journals is basically indexing the content of those journals in the Web of Science, but we don't work directly in a sense, in terms of corporate social responsibility. Yeah, again, there is no attendance form. Since you registered and attended, I will get the attendance report and you'll get your certificate. What is the possible role of AI? What it can serve us in this regard? Yeah, that's I've done a full session about that. It was like 1 hour long. There are lots of AI developments in terms of literature review, finding the topic, helping you to write, improve your language, data analysis, and so on. There are obviously lots of perspectives and angles to tackle. That was not the goal of this session, but hopefully I'll have other sessions about that topic very soon. Yeah, indexing of African journals. There are lots of journals actually from Africa. So here you see, for example, one from Pretoria, South Africa, and so on. There are lots of journals from North Africa as well, from Nigeria, right? So you can see, you can put a filter on your country. If you can say which country you're from, I can show you some examples of journals that. So that's a question from Abdul Hakim. Where are you based exactly? Yeah. So I can put that in the chat. Okay, Nigeria. think we do have journals from Nigeria, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, I need to remove that. Okay, so we have 9. So one way of is to approach. Let me put that in the chat. You can approach these journals, and maybe you can work with them and see how they've done it, how they got indexed. But there is also the journal selection process that I recommend you look at. It explains in details what we need, what our editors do when they analyze journals for indexation. So I guess, Abdul Hakim, you are a journal editor or someone who's managing a journal. So we explain in details what you need to the criteria. So 24 related to quality and 4 related to impact. So you need to have an ISSN, journal title. We need to have some information about the journal publisher, journal URL, having access to the content and so on. So I'll put that in the chat as well. And that would give you a full idea of or complete understanding of what we need. And then, of course, to submit, you can submit through the Web of Science Publisher portal, right? So that's the portal. I'll put it in the chat as well for those of you managing journal. Okay, there was a question that I missed. Okay, what is, okay, I took that already. Yeah, about the upcoming session, webinars, I posted the chat already. I announced them through my newsletter. So as I said, I typically, so this month I've done two webinars, 2 in English, 2 in French. But usually I do 1, and you'll basically on my newsletter, that's why I announce them, as you can see. Right, so very soon you're gonna have the announcement for October. Okay, right, so this one was for last week. I announced that on end of August. Last week I announced this one for today, which is the impact reputation. And very soon I'm gonna announce the one for October and so on. So you receive those announcements by email. On top of that, as I mentioned, I don't only do the webinars as an announcement. I share lots of practical guides. There was one on profile, exactly what I mentioned on the personal branding, right? Some things around, some guides about open access, visualization, and so on. Also funding. Okay. Yeah, so for specific needs, because there are some questions that are quite personal, for example, like training on leadership, public speaking, and so on, feel free to reach out to me. You will get my contact details, because I'm going to send you the certificate and the materials of of today's session, and then feel free to ask any questions there, and we'll take it from there. Yeah, Hakim, feel free to reach out for your journal. I can share some more materials about the indexation of the journal. I think there was one. I will share a link. There was a session that was shared very recently by our editor. So again, this is for Abdul Hakim. Please respond to the email you're gonna receive from me, and I will share with you the full webinar. It's a recorded session about how the process to index goes through all the points that I mentioned very quickly. We went beyond time. Thank you very much for your participation, and the discussion was a pleasure. And I wish you all the best until next time, inshallah. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.